Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
It's Commander's Horn episode 71. The time has come. This month we will see a new game mode finally to be added to Gwent. A wild new gameplay experience hosted by Gaunter O'Dim himself. Greyboxer and Panda are here to talk about what we just saw on the Gwent dev stream, as well as the latest ranked season. All this and another faction challenge on this episode of Commander's Horn. My podcast, my rules. Welcome back to Commander's Horn, a weekly Gwent podcast. I am your host, Dane McBeard, and today I'm joined by the Midnight Viking, Lord Josh of Ard Greyboxer, and the impetuous one, my good friend and fellow co-pastor, Panda. Gentlemen, we have a lot to talk about. Welcome.
Oh, man, it is truly a day of glory for Skellige, at least on this podcast. Considering the company we're keeping with Panda and the exciting launch of the faction challenge today, did anything else happen? Some stream.
I think it's a bit overshadowed by Draft Mode Arena finally coming out after a ton of months, people asking for it. It's finally here, and it looks really exciting. I really liked it.
We'll stick to that then,
Yeah.
Except when I can cut in about Skellige, of course. If you can't tell, I've boarded my long ships on the path to GM this season, and I've really enjoyed Skellige. But today we're drinking ale and raising our horns to the new game mode. By my beard.
Yeah, it's going to be good stuff. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about. We saw lots of stuff. I mean, like, first thoughts, like initial thoughts. I have a couple of things. First of all, I think that 150 ore is a little less than I thought it was going to be. That's pretty good. 9 wins, that seems pretty doable, especially when you can craft some pretty crazy decks. But the road to those wins is going to be pretty wild because your opponents are just as likely to have OP insanity and sometimes just the exact answer. Very frustrating, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be really good. Panda, like, what was your first impression when you were watching the stream there?
I think the 150 ore was, about right what I thought it was going to cost to enter, but the fact you get, a keg by just buying the ticket, I mean, it's really only just 50 ore because there's not really anything else you can use ore for right now. So considering that, I think it's super cheap and it's, obviously very much worth it to try and play and get those really long runs. And the 9 win reward is absolutely insane as well. If you're a good player, if you can get those consistent runs, getting a legendary premium every single time, that's, massive.
It's going to be good stuff. We're going to talk about all of the stuff that we just saw on the dev stream, but I will tell you right now that this episode of Commander's Corn is live. It is recorded on Twitch right now on my channel, twitch.tv/McBearded. Future episodes, though, will be likely hosted by Top Deck, as Commander's Horn is now a Top Deck affiliated program. You can find all episodes of Commander's Horn at commandershorn.com. You can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcasting apps. Send your emails to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com. Tweet at us at Commander's Horn.
This week's show is brought to you by our sponsor, Gaunter O'Dim's Spoon Warehouse. Just head to Trastamara Estate and take the first white. No, actually, this episode is brought to you by our Commandos! Our patrons over at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks for keeping the mics on and the podcast ad-free.
I mean, there's not much more I want to get into. I just want to get into talking about the news. So after this short break here, we will get into talking about everything we learned about the new Gwent Arena right after this. All right, my friends, Gwent Arena is the new game mode that will be added to Gwent soon, TM, as we are known to say here.
Meme is so old now.
It's so memey, I know. It's just like a video game meme at this point. I think everybody knows what soon TM means. But there was a teaser that was dropped on Monday, and it actually was a really cool teaser. I like anything that features the community, small or large. Teaser featured King Blacktooth, Devil Driven, and Merchant, all talking about how it would just be so great if Gwent had a new game mode. And but at the end of it, and also of course all the tweets and Reddit posts about when are we going to get a new game mode. So obviously they've been working on this for quite some time. I think that there was a lot of work put into the artwork, and I'm sure a lot of design considerations made. But Merchant also said that it would be great if it came in February. So guys, what do you think? Do you think we're actually going to be seeing this month? Greyboxer, what do you think?
Well, it seems like like you said, they've had it going for a long time. We even specifically had some of the guys mention on stream today that there is like almost an established meta. Like Luigi was saying, everyone's been playing Weather in arena mode. So like, I don't know if it's that close to being released, but the game, I mean, it looked pretty bug free to me on the stream. And if they can guarantee a sort of bug free experience, I think everybody would be ready for it as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, sure.
I think if they include that merchant footage in the trailer, they're not going to release it in February, right? Because that would be like, oh, we're not going to do this. I don't know. I think it makes sense for it to come out in February. And also, like with the dev stream and everything, I don't think they're going to keep people waiting for a month or two. That's not going to happen. So, I'd say maybe like 3 weeks max, like very end of February maximum. But maybe even like next week. Who knows? I mean, you really don't know with CD Projekt Red. They can surprise you like at any moment. So, hopefully the sooner the better, obviously.
I mean, February is the shortest month, so it's the best month to say, hey, this month. So that's good, at least. And, I mean, it would be good. Obviously, I think that probably just kind of going by, like, the track record of how things have been announced and implemented and worked on, they probably wouldn't be showing it if it wasn't in a really good state to at least be tested. So it might be tested soon, and hopefully everybody can get their hands on it. And, yeah, that first crucial, like, couple weeks is going to be so intense. I'm going to be playing it a lot. It seems like a great game for streaming, a great game mode for streaming, because just the drafting process alone, and I was talking about this, we did a little viewing party for the stream, just the drafting process alone seems like already so exciting, because you're going to have everybody just backseating the hell out of you, probably like pick this card, pick that card, but you might want to pick something like kind of a little off like popularity, just in case, like, maybe you have like a really, really overpowered choice, but you also have a lock. And it might just be better just to always have that lock. It might be better to have, something that might have like a weird synergy. Weather Clears obviously seem to maybe be popular because Dagon's a leader that's out there. Woodland Spirit is a great goal to pick. I mean, it's very interesting, like the meta that may already be forming. But how excited are you guys to stream this game mode for sure? Greyboxer, you actually just started streaming again, and it looks like you've got the outfit for it as well. It's going to be like, are you going to dedicate a ton of time to it, or are you going to maybe split it 50-50? How are you going to approach this?
It's going to be hard, right? Because we have to remember that seasons have been shortened, and they have also reduced the ceiling to make Grandmaster. So your time is even more important as you're grinding ranked mode to try to hit Grandmaster for the season and to get that season's rewards if you're going for top 1,000, for example. So splitting your time as a streamer can be really difficult. So for me, if I play arena mode, even though it's pretty cheap and you almost lose nothing, I'll have to play it towards the end of a stream after I'm getting tired of the ranked grind or something, because like I said, it doesn't really cost you anything. It's 150 ore, which is what you would have earned by just playing ranked mode anyway. And you would basically get it back, or at least its value back, even if you lost out. But there's that really high, amount of fun that you're going to have in drafting, the relaxing, choices you're going to make, and the ability to involve your viewers with what you're choosing and what kind of deck you want to build. So I think that that arena is going to do a lot for the visual aspects of streaming and seeing something different specifically.
For sure. Panda, you're a competitive guy. Are you super excited about draft?
Yeah, I think it's going to change like the Gwent landscape completely. Right now, really, like if you play ranked or pro ladder, the only real incentive to play Gwent is, to be competitive. I think not that many people play casual just to play Gwent, like just to have fun playing Gwent. I'm not saying it's not fun to play competitively, but really it's the only end goal right now. And with Arena coming in, I think that changes it completely. It opens up, a game mode where you can just have fun with it and not have that, more have fun with the journey and not so much the result. If you win the match, if you, go to Grandmaster, if you get top whatever in pro ladder. So I think it changes things a lot. With the current rules, I'm not sure if it's going to be, a fun for a little while and then it gets kind of still because it's, if someone draws 8 gold and you only draw 2. But regardless, I think it's going to be really fun. And if we'll see with time, we'll be able to tell if it's, balanced to play, for fun for a long time or just for a short period of time. Maybe they make changes as well. Who knows? But overall, I think it's going to change Gwent completely, and I think the game really needed something like this right now.
I mean, it's interesting because it's like, I mean, you get beat by like an 8 gold deck, but wouldn't you just want to like jump back in there and be like, oh man, this is my chance to get an 8 gold deck. Now I want to do it. So I mean, there's like options at least that like you always have that chance. Like that's why I think that like the actual drafting process of the arena mode is going to be, it's going to be that much more interesting. I just want to call out to somebody in the chat who just said, like, why are we talking about this? Like, this is some unheard concept and we don't know how good it's going to be, because obviously, I actually do want to touch on this. Obviously, we are fairly familiar, some of us more than others, are fairly familiar with Hearthstone's arena mode, which is a very similar concept where you do pick an amount of cards to build a deck of random cards, and you go in to win an amount of games before you lose an amount of games and get rewards for that. So obviously, there's a lot of similarities, including the name. I actually do want to ask you guys your opinion on the fact that they have called it Arena. Actually called it Arena, and as Hearthstone also calls their mode Arena. But it is still different because Gwent's a very, very different game. Greyboxer, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that they just said, who cares? We'll call it Arena. You can call it Arena 2, Hearthstone. You know what? We want people to know what this mode is all about. And if it happens to be the vernacular in the card game scene that draft mode is Arena, it's called Arena, then we can do the same thing. There was Witcher 2 Arena, so I think that came out before Hearthstone anyway. So CD Projekt Red already won that race. But I think that they're just putting their foot in the ground here. Like, hey, listen, we want to see what you can do with when RNG has taken the wheel, right? Like RNGs has take the wheel. I think that like losing to a 20 gold card deck is going to be really, it's going to feel bad. But because you don't really lose anything, unless you're on your 8th or 9th game, you're not going to lose your mind angry. So like, while I would like to see them think about balancing draft mode just a little bit, maybe limiting the gold cards, something like that would be an easy thing to do, I'd hope. I think that we're not going to really know until we played a lot.
Mm-hmm. Panda, what do you think about the name? What do you think about the concept of it, at least? I mean, does it really matter in the end? It is just a name. The gameplay is going to be important as well. I mean, I do agree. Maybe the name, they could have called it just draft mode, I guess.
I mean, I think the name, it doesn't really matter too much. People are going to get butthurt over anything nowadays, so they can't really, dodge that one. But it's an easily recognizable name. Like, you know what it is when you get into it. When someone says, "Oh, Arena's coming out for Gwent," you know what that's going to be. It's going to be, kind of draft mode, kind of Arena like Hearthstone. You've played Hearthstone before, so it's just an easy way to get people to, they know what the game mode is. They can play it right away, and just to not cause confusion. Mm-hmm. I think you're really copying. It's like Fortnite coming out and it's about battle royale game, and people are saying it's a ripoff from PUBG. Like it's nothing, just the game mode, just the the kind of thing. It's not the same thing at all though. So I think it's not that big of an issue. As for like the gold cards that Greyboxer was talking about, I imagine cards are going to be like weighed when if you get like 7 golds in a row, you have a less chance to get the 8th possibly.
I hope so.
And the same if you only draw 2, maybe you have a higher chance of getting a 3rd or a 4th, for example. So I imagine, that's how it's been in other card games and other versions of this kind of game mode in the past. So I imagine it's not going to be like very common to have to face someone that has like 9 golds and you only have 1. So it'll be kind of like the outlier. If it happens, I mean, no, you won't be happy, but it can happen.
I mean, when they did the draft, they ended up with like almost the same amount of each color card. They had to, I think I'm just drawing from my memory right now, but it was like 7 golds, like 9 silvers and 8 bronzes or something like that. Like, and even Luigi was even saying that they were getting very unlucky at the first little bit when even though they opened up with a gold on their draft, they didn't get another gold until like the 7th or 8th card. That doesn't seem crazy. I mean, obviously we're coming from a world where 4 golds is the limit. So
right.
Getting over 4 golds on average every game is probably, I would imagine that's probably the standard that they want to go for. But the idea that they're weighting bronzes, silvers, and golds roughly equally, because that's what it looked like in the draft. I don't know if it's true. And I certainly hope they make it so it's not actually possible to, like, theoretically, mathematically, obviously, like, you can flip a coin 100 times. It can always land on heads, but it would probably never happen to you. Hopefully that there's no, like, mathematical possibility of somebody getting, over 10 golds. I would hope not. I mean, I'm really interested to see if there is any weighting there.
Yeah, I mean, what I would like to see beyond that, though, is because we are just coming off of a patch that released with patch notes, actually, that said, hey, this is why X was changed. What I don't want to see is this was this was balanced because it was used too much in arena mode. Like, I don't want to see balancing around arena mode. Like, keep balancing around the core game and the ranked mode play and the pro ladder play. Don't balance around arena mode. But the problem with that is going to be because we're not going to see cards like Mangonel be played. You're never going to play Mangonel unless you happen to have rolled Morvran as your leader or something. But you don't even know that till the end, right? So you're never going to pick that card. So are we going to see stuff like Mangonels and other engine buffs? Because if they don't have a sort of like a neutral feel, like a Hawk or Smuggler kind of easy engine, they're going to be completely not played. So like I just hope that we don't take this too far and say, hey, balance arena by not letting this or this happen. Don't balance the cards around arena. That would be my only hope, I guess.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that. I mean, like, it's an interesting point you just made. Like, Panda, would you pick a Mangonel if you had no reveal? But would you pick an Alchemist if you had no reveal? But would you pick a Blackfire Scorp? Like, you would. Where do you start the pick? If you can't line up your synergies, when do you actually commit? Because you wouldn't pick any reveal card if you didn't have a reveal card before then. How many reveal cards would pass you by before you felt like, oh man, I could have picked that Alchemist? Like, is Alchemist like worthwhile to start with? Like, are all these synergy cards doomed to just be a wasted slot in the pick order?
I mean, I think that's the risk that comes with, Arena. You have to, see if you want to pick this card that has synergy reliance with other cards, and if you don't draw them, your deck's not going to be great. But if you don't have a better option, for example, and you have to pick it, then you just pick it and hope you get something better. I mean, I think it's fine that there's cards that aren't going to be viable for Arena. I don't think they all have to be viable for Arena. Like Greyboxer said, I think the competitive Gwent is one thing, and ranked ladder, pro ladder, whatever is one thing. You can play all these different archetypes. You're in control of what you're building, and then arena is just a different game altogether. And if Mangonel isn't good there, then too bad for that card. But it's not gonna break Gwent because you can't play a few cards in arena. Actually, once they start adding more and more cards, it'll be less of an issue.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, it is okay for there to be bad cards. Yeah.
So what's going to be good? Let's talk about that. Let's talk. Do we want to go into that right now and just kind of talk about what we saw on the stream and talk about what we think is going to be good in the arena mode?
I mean, we can muse about it, I suppose. I mean, there's some cards that are obviously good. Like, I even think that, like, Dwarven Skirmisher is probably still like a good pound for pound value card, even like because you're not drafting Poly, you're not worrying about like your end game play with like Poly and stuff like that. So that card's still probably really good. And you have to think about kind of like the faction spectrum, right? You're not just thinking like what's a good card for each faction. It's what's a good card, period. Like, probably that's like a good place to start. Cards with big bodies on it are generally probably going to be good, I think. I don't know, like Panda, where does your mind go like right away?
I think just the general cards that you can vomit point outs, I guess you would say, is just they're good cards for arena because they don't rely on anything else. It's just pure value. Like Luigi was saying, the Death Stream Philippa's a great card because it's just value. You don't depend on anything really. You just damage units and that's all there is to it. So as long as your enemy has units and doesn't have all spells, then you're good to go. But in general, I think it's almost always going to be value cards in arena more than synergy cards because it's really hard to pull off other stuff otherwise. I think it's still interesting to start seeing the dynamic between the interplay with the factions because there are some combos that you can play with that you wouldn't be able to even think about in ranked. So it'll open up a few possibilities that hopefully people can get under and start playing in arena and make some cool clips for Reddit. Other than that, I think it's also important to say I think it's going to be interesting to see how Gwent does it with Arena because there isn't a mana curve like in Hearthstone and other card games. So I think it maybe lowers the skill cap a bit because you're just playing for value. You don't have too many more factors to think about when you're drafting cards. If you get a gold, you want a gold almost always. If you get a silver, it's better than a bronze most of the time. So it's just like getting value cards most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. Greyboxer, what do you think? I mean, I think create cards are probably going to be pretty good. Like when you look at how Vreem did there and how Elven Scout will likely perform. It's like getting two cards in one or just like a boost on a card. Like obviously playing Elven Scout, you pick the highest value card plus you got +1 from the Scout. So it's just kind of always going to be better. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Well, Create's really cool for arena mode because it gives you those options, right? Like usually you get several options that do completely different things. And in many scenarios, at least one of them is useless, if not all three. But you're usually going to get some pretty solid value out of Create. So I think that Create is going to be a really solid, reliable option. And they mentioned that on the stream. I think Weather is going to be really strong because you're going to have drafted weather clears to deal with it. Like we saw Gold Weather being played and it drew an instant pass. That's kind of thing's going to happen a lot. So be prepared for Gold Weather in arena mode. I mean, I think that we're going to look at neutral cards or cards that have a neutral flavor. A card like Coral that can turn something into a Jade figurine could be huge. You don't need to have any particular synergy around that kind of card. Obviously, a card like Igni is going to be good. So you're going to look for your high value kind of cards, just like you would when building a normal deck, without having to be concerned with, does this enable X, Y, or Z strategy that's my actual end game? Because who knows what your end game is? You need to get points, and you need to have high value cards. So I think that getting several cards that work in long rounds, several cards that can finish a game, would be your goal here, and those are going to be the strongest cards.
For sure. I think there's a couple more things that I wanted to talk about, specifically about the fact that spies do exist in this mode. So I think that there's probably two schools of thought on this one, and I think before people start burning the house down, I think that one of the reasons why spies are really, really strong, one of the many reasons, is because in a constructed format, you can really build your deck to kind of abuse the coin flip already. So spies kind of either combat your opponent's answer to that or make your situation even better. However, you have a constructed deck that is usually like, you can count on your opponent, you know, making big plays, like 13 to 15 point bronzes all the time. The synergy in their deck just kind of really popping off all the time, and then dropping that spy on you. The done banners come out or whatever happens, makes it really hard to catch up. However, in this mode, your synergy is much less reliable. So do you think, this is kind of an open question for both of you, do you think that spies will be as bad, or do you think that spies being included in this mode will be a problem? General thoughts on spies. Panda, hit me.
I think it's irrelevant, really. I mean, it's not going to be that important, at least not as much as it was in ranked before this last patch. You have, you know, like you said, there's a lot less control with the deck, so you can't really, you know, bend the situation into something that favors you if you have 2 or 3 spies. You also don't really have, you know, last say isn't as important. You don't have cards like Nova, cards like big finishers that want no guaranteed last say either, so you don't need to force out the round 1 to make sure you can have last say in round 3. I think in general, having less control of your deck makes it so that coin flip and spies are not as important. It might still, you know, mess up your, you know, 8th win on arena, and then you can go cry on Reddit, but I think it won't be as important. It'll happen, you know, not very often, to be honest.
I'm going to interject and just say that at the end of the stream, when they said, if you're having a problem, play the game more, don't cry on Reddit. Like, that's the most
Message
get
from
good.
The devs too.
We like literally the devs told you to get good.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, though, you're right, Panda, that people are going to be upset when they get to the 8th or 9th win and they're that close to a premium legendary and they miss out on it because of RNG. But that's how you got there. You got there with RNG. So don't get mad when it bites you back, because it will. So one thing I want to say, though, is that with spies, you know, we're talking about an arena mode where you're going to be drawing a lot more than the usual number of cards. Like, you might have more than 4 golds. You might have more than 6 golds. And Brady makes this point really well in the chat and says, listen, if you've got more golds in your deck, spies are way better because you have a higher chance of drawing golds. So it does sort of add a little bit extra leverage to the spies because you're able to basically get a better guarantee of the value you're going to get out of the spies. They're going to be on average a higher value, and they'll provide more of a benefit. So for me, I'll be looking for spies in arena every time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to immediately gravitate towards that. However, the done banner, though, I'm going to see how many I can stick into my deck. Somebody in the chat just said, Sponge Pedro says 10 done bananas. 10 done bananas minimum. That's what
you also have 30 cards in your deck. Like, you're obligated to get 30 cards, and you don't have guaranteed thinning. So even if you have 2 spies, you might not see either one, you know, till the very end, or not at all. So like you said, you have that. That is true that spies have a bit of a better turnout when you play them, because you can draw into more value overall on average. But there's also the chance that you just don't thin enough to get them.
Was it 30? It looked like there were 3 rows of 9, and the leader was one of those cards. So I think it's actually a 26 card deck.
Might have been.
But I could have been wrong. I could be wrong about that.
Might have been 26. I thought it was
I
like
think
just
30
10,
would.
10,
I think 30 is a good number, though. I actually thought that when I saw it at first, I thought they were rows of 10. I thought 30. Okay, yeah, that makes it even less consistent and
That's
more
27,
like
27.
higher variance. And I think that people it's going to be a great chill out game as well. It is 27 cards. Yeah, 26 plus leader. Yeah, okay.
It's 26, but even then, you don't have the guaranteed hitting you have in your constructed
sure.
tier 1 deck. So it still makes it so you can't really slide. I mean, we saw in the dev stream, I think they both had like 10 cards left in their deck when it got to round 3. And if you watch any other stream of Gwent right now, you'll see like, oh, 3 cards left, 4 cards left. Like you thin a lot normally. You want to keep your decks consistent, as you would like Mill kind of dead right now. But overall, I think it's not going to draw into spies easily.
And the visuals were nice, a nice touch as well. We did see, we got to see the whole interface that they have set up for it. The pick 4 is cool. The scrolls, the mirror, the contracts, Gaunter, of course, himself, the new game board. And Greyboxer, you have a note here on the show notes here about the card backs. How do you feel about the card backs being all one single faction? I mean, I'm personally okay with this based on your leader, right? But what do you think?
Well, I mean, that's how they bootstrapped it, right? Where they're like, hey, it's, by the way, all the card backs are going to be whatever your leader was. Okay, ship it. Like, I don't know that really appeals to me as someone who's playing arena mode against someone who I know has cards from all 5 or maybe 6 soon factions. And what I want to see are those card backs. I want to know, okay, he's got 2 Nilfgaards, a Northern Realms, and monsters. And if that final card is Northern Realms, I'm going to put him on Shawnee, and that's really cool. And you can't do that if all of the card backs are monsters, So I think that it adds a little bit more flavor to Arena to be able to see the different card backs. But I'm worried that might be limited by their engine right now or something, or it's limited by something else. But I don't know if it's a design decision to make it so that your leader decides your card backs, or if it's an engine problem. But I would personally really prefer to see all the different card backs and say, oh, this guy got a lot of monsters cards. I wonder if he built some synergy or something like that.
Yeah, I can agree with you. But even then, I mean, if they Burgess said that it was bound to be changed still, like there could be changes still, and then like you said, it might just be a tech thing as well. But I think with Arena being a completely new thing, we're gonna see a fair amount of changes as the months pass and players give feedback, and CDPR tries to get the best game mode out possible. Obviously they've been balancing internally, and I guess that they've done a good job of trying to balance the game mode so it's fun and also maybe competitive as well, because there might just be players that want to play only Arena and be good at it and try and get premium legendaries every single time. So it's going to be a process, I think, to try, keep on balancing it once it comes out, and maybe change things. If people don't like the card back thing, they can just change it, or think about changing it. So I think it'll evolve a lot throughout this year.
I mean, it's really interesting, the idea, Greyboxer, that you can see the card backs, you can guess, you could say, okay, well, like what my opponent has is now something that I can maybe ascertain. But it changes the game so much, and I wonder, like, it would be it's almost like two completely different styles of gameplay where you don't know anything about your opponent's hand, or you have like this little bit of information. I'm not like completely allergic to the idea of that. I don't know if they're ever going to put that in, but it's actually a really interesting idea. It's an interesting concept.
Could it make it more skill-based, I guess? Like if you wanted to be very competitive in Arena, that could maybe add that little bit of skill to it, and the fact that you have card knowledge and you can put your opponent on cards and therefore be able to potentially play out your random deck a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I almost kind of like want to. It would be interesting if, like, I don't know, some games were like that and some weren't, but then that would be even like add more wild inconsistency. Like, I almost want to just try it to see like how that would feel. I don't know. I don't think they're limited by tech. I mean, they already have some card backs appear in your opponent's. Like, does an operator do that, or at least he used to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think in general, there's going to be a big, conflict between how much fun it is and how competitive it is at the start, especially with that we see like 8 golds being drafted. Obviously, it makes it a lot more fun, but it might also make it less competitive if you only draft 2 and your opponent gets 8. So I think as maybe the fun factor or the initial release wears out, we're going to have to see as players if it stays fun, if it stays relevant, if it stays, addicting enough to play that over ranked altogether for some players. And if not, then probably CDPR will look into it and maybe make it more competitive, make it, have a longer, life in general as a game mode. Because I think it'll be very fun at the start, but it might wear off depending how the cards are weighed and if you have, the weight draws or not. So it's going to be hard to see, but I think there's going to be a big conflict between how fun it is and how competitive it is. And if there's a perfect balance of it, I think if they find that, it'll make it a really good game mode.
Yeah, that's a great note to end on. Greyboxer, do you have any last thoughts about this new Gwent Arena before we move on to another item?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. We talked about how you get into it with the contracts, 150 ore. We talked about the visuals and the gameplay. Yeah, I think we hit every point.
Right on. Well, then that's good. This is it. It's coming soon. Hopefully, we're talking about it with hands-on experience sooner rather than later, because
yes.
I got pretty hungry for it when I saw it. Like, even them going through the draft on the stream, I'm like, oh, I want to do this. Like, I want to actually have these debates and discussions about the draft. But there is reality, of course. We are back on the live server. The faction battle was announced today. Another faction battle, another chance for borders. Scoia'Tael taking on Skellige. This time, you have to put in the work. No lazy Nilfgaardians getting everything handed to them. They actually have to get your 30 wins to get your border in this situation. The hard work that the monsters had to put in for the last faction battle. So you have rewards at 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 wins, which is a tall order, 50 wins in, I imagine, a week or so. I mean, for some people, yeah, you get for 3 extra kegs. I know it doesn't seem like the time investment, but hey, a little bit more. I think everybody's looking for.
It's a bonus.
It is a bonus. Yeah, it is a bonus. Greyboxer, are you repping Skellige? I imagine you are.
Yeah.
Stupid question, right? Panda, what about you?
I'm definitely a fan of Skellige. I mean, completely over Scoia'Tael. Since, the old closed beta days, I've always been a number one Skellige fan, like Greyboxer said. So I always loved playing, especially when they were tier 1 with the cracked decks. I miss those decks with Savage Bears. But overall, yeah, I'm a big fan of Skellige.
Yeah. Now, I actually prefer Scoia'Tael over Skellige, so I am repping Scoia'Tael in this battle. I've been playing a little bit of this. Mulligan's kind of getting popular. I've been playing my own version of it lately, and it's got a little vanilla Geralt in it. It's pretty crazy. It's got some pretty crazy bombs with officers. Pretty thin as well. And I really enjoyed playing it, so I figure it's just an excuse for me to keep playing and refining that deck. And I'm looking forward to seeing some other Mulligan deck lists, because I've been hearing that it's actually coming out. And we could talk about this maybe in our discussion afterwards. But, or I guess it's fine to talk about it now. It is Scoia'Tael versus Skellige. Has anybody run into Mulligan out there, and kind of what's the gameplay been like? Because I've been playing my version of it, but I haven't played against anything really yet. Anybody can grab this one.
Yeah, I've seen a good bit of it in ranked mode. It's it's just like your typical kind of like officer spam kind of stuff. Shiru's in there. I mean, there's it's just good value. It's kind of like a decent like points vomit, as much as that term is becoming extremely popular. It's that sort of deck, and if you have like the ability to get really high value out of your officers. Some of the decks, like one of the top decks right now is running Nova, I think. And you're going to be using Isengrim as well, which I think is really good. And that card has been criminally underrated for a long time, and I think it's finally getting a lot more play. I don't know. There's a lot of good cards in the deck. I think that you can get like a ton of just straight bronze value with the scouts as well, with the create. I know that drives some people insane. Not looking at you, A-, but I think that Mulligan right now is in a really strong spot, and I think that you have to go toe to toe with them, and I mean, it's really almost a game of, can you get their Nova out if they drew it, and hope that you do, because otherwise they've got basically the bronze value that dwarves used to have almost. So you have to be prepared to go into a deep round that they can put up a lot of power.
Yeah, it's interesting because Scoia'Tael now not having like the top tier 1 dwarf deck kind of all over the place, it actually opens up a lot of stuff. You're saying Isengrim was criminally underrated, but really Scoia'Tael had some pretty powerful golds taking up those slots right now. Do you think that, like, what do you think about kind of the spectrum of Scoia'Tael right now, Panda, that from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think Mulligan, I mean, it had its grand opening when in that one patch where it was super dominant the first week. Was that like the very start of open beta maybe, or like the patch after it? I'm not sure, but
the Mulligan, but officers got nerfed. I remember, I think it was
they were
right
nerfed
after Gamescom,
with a hotfix.
Yeah, it was like
right
a hot fix. It was like a 3-day spree of just Mulligan everywhere.
Right after
And then after that, like you said, there was just Scoia'Tael decks that have always, been more relevant with Scoia'Tael and then with dwarves as well this last patch, especially with dwarves, because dwarves is a deck that was so easy to play as well. So it was like, if you want to win and you're going to play Scoia'Tael, you can't not play dwarves. Like, there's no thought in your mind where you don't play dwarves, I think, in like Pro Ladder, for example. With other factions, it's not really the case. You can potentially play Consume badly. You're just, bad at playing Consume. You can play Aridin, and it's not that big of a difference. But dwarves being easy and good meant that everything else in Scoia'Tael was kind of overshadowed last patch. And, I mean, I've seen Mulligan sporadically, pretty much every patch for the past few months. It's a decent deck, but I think it doesn't have what it takes right now to cement itself as like a tier 1 deck. I think it's still a very viable deck that you can definitely play and get a lot of wins with, but maybe not the strongest deck in the game. I think it's still a very fun deck. Like you said, McBeard has some really cool plays that you can make, and it's always been, relevant, although not tier 1.
Yeah. On the other side of this faction battle is Skellige, and I've seen some people talk about how Skellige feels these days. I've seen, one tweet I'd like to draw attention to is I think Trudon recently talked about the bronze core of Skellige not really having the synergy it used to. A lot of archetypes kind of lost to time, like Queensguard, and like using like a discard brand with like the ships, the Warlong ships. I think at least they were called that at one point. I need to brush up on what the new names for everything are, but. The idea that the bronze core for Skellige is kind of limiting what you can really do. Is that true, do you think? I mean, you've been playing a little bit of bears lately, Boxer, and there is, brand discard is still out there, and there's there's a Nova list out there as well that it's still kind of focusing around bears because Beastmasters are pretty good, right?
Yeah, everything focused around Beastmasters or Bear Masters rather, because there's so much. There's just 12 vomited points, and I'm using Bone Talismans with Haymade Protectors in the deck as well to have access to Resurrects for the bears. If someone has the audacity to wound one of my bears, I can then heal it with one of the Bone Talismans and then resurrect the strengthened bear in a later round, or even better, resurrect one of the protectors, which pulls a Bone Talisman, and then I resurrect the strengthened bear. So there's a lot you can do in terms of just getting like really solid bronze value out of the deck. However, I mean, Trudon makes a good point that the core synergies have been sort of limited. We were sort of joking around in the Commander's Horn Discord today about, hey, we need 2 more cards for Skellige. What if we just nerfed Priestess of Freya and created 2 more resurrection cards, Corsairs and Bone Talisman? Works, right? And then you have just like, it's much harder to, you're much more like shoehorned into different resurrections and card archetypes when you are stuck with different reses that work for only certain cards. So yeah, I think that you're going to see bears on the ladder a lot. They do that same thing sort of that really Francesca is doing right now, and you're just going to get good bronze value. And you're going to play cards like him, and you're going to play Coral if you want that. I prefer Igni. And I know Gulox is a big fan of Wolf's Bane, whereas I prefer Ceres. I mean, there's a lot of different cards you can play, but I'd actually be really interested to hear what Panda's playing if he's playing Skellige right now.
I'm not playing right now because I played, a lot of Skellige Pro Ladder before this patch, so I already have that kind of done already. Yeah. But in general, I think, Skellige's always had very strong silvers, and with King Bran as well. I mean, we've seen King Bran with Morkvark and Olgierd for patch after patch after patch. It doesn't change. The bronzes change completely, but I mean, we used to see, Warmongers, Raiders, Harpooners, then it switched to Longships and Marauders and Beastmasters, so it changed a lot. But yeah, I think there's definitely some bronze cards that are kind of forgotten. The archetype's not really as supported. It's kind of not as relevant in terms of points, just not there. Like Queensguards and cards like Skald, for example. Archer had some fame, a moment of fame with the Cursed archetype and Herald Houndstone stuff. But in general, some bronze cards are like really forgotten. I think the silvers and golds are still great. Coral is still a fantastic gold card that's been relevant for, patch after patch. But in general, I think the bronzes are a bit iffy. Kind of sad that Marauders got nerfed. They don't count twice for a damage unit and a curse unit. But this also opens up it opens up more, possibilities other than Longship for your typical Siri Nova, King Brand deck. So I'm happy about that as well. Although it makes it like a bit weaker overall. So if you didn't play your games before this last patch in Pro Ladder, then I'm sorry to be you. In general, I think bronze cards could get a bit of a revamp, and a few things can be changed. I think in general.
See, I thought that the double dip nerf on Marauders was fine, but
Yes.
then again, I'm not a huge like I don't play a lot of Skellige. So I don't maybe understand how deep it is. I mean, Mogwai didn't like it for sure. He tweeted about it. Greyboxer, you just gave a big thumbs down. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, so it's really hard to defend like that sort of like synergy, right? Because it was always wounded cards. And now it's wounded or cursed. And if you have a wounded cursed unit, that used to be a nice, thanks for wounding my cursed unit. Like you played into my hands. But now it's more along the lines of, okay, well, since my card has a baseline value of 9, they had to nerf its effect, which limits its upside, which is good for balance because they can still drop at like 14, 15, 16, but you need to have a very particular board state. Whereas you could get those higher numbers more easily, either by running your own long ships to have the engines at wounded, or by having having someone wound your cursed units. So toning the power down, I'm okay with, because they were super high on the points vomit list. And but I wish that, like, I don't want to see like a tune down to 7 and make them work like that, but I do miss that synergy because that was a lot of nice points, and it's the way they've always worked.
Yeah. If you compare it like within the faction of Skellige, if you compare the nerf, it's a positive nerf because it opens up, like Greyboxer said, Bone Talisman and different cards that were played a little bit when they came out, and then when people got like the net deck, Light Longships, Beast Masters, all that good stuff, you just only play that. It was, mathematically the best deck to play. It had the initial play with the Longship, it had the finisher play with the Marauder, and you didn't really want to change anything else. Like, it was the perfect Skellige Nova deck, and that's all you would play. And because those got nerfed, it opens up more possibilities with the bronze cards in Skellige, so that's good. But if you compare it to other factions, then it got a lot worse, because that combo with Longships and Marauders was really powerful. Like Greyboxer said, in a long round it would get you a lot of points, and it put a lot of importance on shutting down that Longship. If you had a Thunder for that Longship as soon as it came out, it was great to shut it down. But in general, I think it's a positive change for Skellige. It opens up more possibilities, but obviously, if you like Skellige, you don't want to see your faction get a little bit nerfed. So maybe I'm not happy about it, but I think it's a good change in general.
We haven't talked about Axeman yet, though. So Axeman is also out there. I faced like 2 or 3 Axeman just yesterday, just doing my climb. Still kind of climbing up through the meme lands. So, I mean, I don't know how viable it is, but it's definitely out there for people, like the majority of people that are still climbing right now. The season did still just begin, so you're likely encountering it. I've always had kind of a mixed feelings about Axeman. I've never enjoyed playing it. I've definitely hated losing to it, but then again, people just don't like losing to anything, right? So it's just a deck that it forces you to play a very specific way, but Axeman feels stronger than it's felt in a while. I don't know. Greyboxer, how do you feel about Axeman?
Well, I mean, we've seen Axeman in a competitive scene, right, and seen its weaknesses, and those weaknesses are evident, and they are known by everyone by now. I remember Metronos trying to push Axeman in, what was it, Gwent Slam 3?
Yeah, one of them.
Yeah, I think it was 2 or 3, and he was getting punished by people who knew how to beat the win con of Axeman, which the win con of Axeman is tie round 1 and hope for a long round 2, or win round 1 somehow and then dry pass for card advantage round 2 and then have a long round 3. Like, you need to have almost 2 long rounds to win as Axeman. If you get 2 mid-sized rounds, you're probably not going to win both of them. So the problem with Axeman, well, okay, I mean, I just think that you can always win round 1 or round 3 with Axeman, but you normally can't win both. At least not with my experience. And I know Super JJ's been playing it. I'm not sure how much success he's been having, but I, from what I did see, he's running into a lot of the same issues that I've had. And it's just that you can't really craft the length of round that you want anymore, because people know that Axemen are weak in a short round, and they'll just dry you out,
Consume goes the same way, right? You squeeze them, you bleed them out of the resources. You have to be in a position to do it, so sometimes you're not always in that position. But I find that like 4 or 5 cards and Avalox in there as well can give. I mean, like for me, I've been playing against Axemen. They have no problem playing Darren early, no problem playing Axemen early. They got those ships because they just want to bring them back anyway. So it makes their Corsairs better, it makes their Freyas better. They hold Herald to the end, and then they just bomb you. And it's, you know, they don't have to play their Skellige Storm until round 3 because they're playing their Drought or their Ragnarok in round 1. So, I mean, that's how it seems, and I don't think it's a concern, but I mean, yeah, I mean, if you bleed them, they are vulnerable, I guess.
Yeah, and that's just sort of the way it is, and they are especially susceptible to removal. And so some of these Scoia'Tael decks and the Viper Witchers and Alchemy Nilfgaard can really easily deal with Axemen. And you're going to find a lot of those decks on the ladder. So I think you don't even have to really tech against Axemen so long as you're playing a deck that's naturally good against Axemen, or if you just know how to beat their win con.
Axemen is a controversial topic for me. I used to love them way back in the day in closed beta when they were, you know, very fun to play for me. I played them a lot. It was probably one of the first decks that I really like started to master. This is like 8 months ago, like very long time ago. And then there was a patch where Frost would hit every single unit on the row, and Axemen was just, you know, the worst deck I've ever seen in Gwent. The most toxic, cancerous deck I've ever seen in Gwent.
So bad.
And after that, I have not touched Axemen. I have like PTSD. I want to because it was really fun for me back then, and I think it's fine now. But yeah, that was just terrible for me as a player. I literally quit Gwent for 3 weeks when that was happening. But right now, I think it's a fun deck. I think it has the same problems that Movement Scoia'Tael has, and partially Aridin, although Aridin's a bit more flexible. They're decks that you really have to build your deck around one thing, and they do one thing very well, which is, you know, perform in a long round, even to levels where if you give them a very long round, you know it's lost, no matter what you have in your hand, no matter if they get bad card draws or anything. You're pretty much guaranteed to lose in a very long round against Axemen. That's just the way they work. I think they'll never be tier 1 decks because they focus too much on one strategy, and it's very hard. You have to be a very good player to know when to pass properly, to know. I think good players can play it well, but in general, I think it's a deck that suffers the same thing that Movement Scoia'Tael suffers, which is if it has a surprise factor, like Greyboxer said, if people don't know how to play against it, it's very, very good. And Movement Scoia'Tael was very, very good for 2 weeks when it first became popular with both Golden Weathers and with Marigold's Hailstorm and with Zoltan. But once people found out you can literally go 2 cards down into a very short round 3 and still win against Movement Scoia'Tael. Back then it was like Henselt with the Shawnee Death Mold armor, you know, the heavy cavalry combo. You could go both those archetypes were like clashing at the very top to be tier 1. That patch, you can go 2 cards down with Henselt and just, you know, weather out, pun intended, the golden weather in a round 2, and then go into a 2-card or 1-card round 3 with Shawnee and Dijkstra, and you would still win because they have very bad tools for a short round. And nowadays it's not as important because there are more options. You have, you know, Siri Nova, you have different cards that can get you a finisher. You know, you can kind of you know, make up a finisher in a deck that doesn't normally have one. But still, I think those archetypes suffer from that, and it's hard to play them well, and it's hard to make those decks tier 1. They're still viable. You can still play them. They have very interesting you know, game plans compared to every other deck, but I think they'll never really be tier 1 unless they have, you know, very good finisher, very good short round, and a very good long round. And then they're just broken. So they'll get nerfed.
I mean, I also remember the Axemen meta, and it was so brutal. It was so frustrating to play in that time. And I know that, you know, there's always metas out there where there's this deck that just drives you absolutely crazy. Right now, at this moment, at the time of this recording, in this very minute, I don't feel that way about the game. I don't feel like there is something that's driving me crazy yet. Maybe blue coin reveal is sometimes a little aggravating, but even that is starting. Even I'm starting to play K-Ran a bit more, so it's not even that crazy. So, but it's that doesn't feel anywhere near as bad as Axemen felt in the meta that you're describing, Panda, because that was just a nasty deck. Guys, I want to go off script a little bit. Originally, I wanted to plan on talking about the meta in general, talking about all the other factions and stuff. I don't know if I want to do that. We talked about Skellige for a good long time, as well as Scoia'Tael. There's something I want to talk about instead. The discussion I want to have. Greyboxer, you've been using a term throughout this podcast that I actually don't enjoy. I don't like this term. I don't like the term point vomit, because I feel you know exactly what you knew what was coming. I want to talk to you about kind of deck types. I think that's where I want this discussion to go. So we're going to go into our strategy section or our discussion section, and I want to talk about general deck types and why we why are we okay with kind of demeaning a tempo deck and calling it point vomit? So that's what I would like to talk about right after this.
Maybe not today and not tomorrow, but someday someone will find a way to take you down.
So I see it everywhere. I see point vomit decks are a problem, and I don't necessarily believe it, because I think that it's just applying a dirty word and applying kind of an insulting nature to a style of deck that is really just kind of tempo, right? It's kind of the one way, it's one of the many ways you can play Gwent right now. Between hybrids, of course, you have tempo, you have like an engine-based build, and you have a control build, and they kind of all work together in sort of a triangle. I've preached this for quite some time, and I always equate tempo to aggro in maybe another card game, in other card games where you have like health totals, ways to end a game quickly or rush down your opponent if there's any sort of like a combat mechanic, and you kind of can control through that. But in Gwent, it's just about building points very, very fast and efficiently and quickly. So fast and quickly, you got that? So I think that it's calling it point vomit and kind of attaching that sort of dirty word and upturned nose towards that I don't think is necessarily correct or fair generally. And I am a big fan of engine. I'm not even somebody who plays like crazy tempo decks like dwarfs or in the past meta, or Nilfgaard is an engine deck in a way, one of the best ones, Nilfgaard Spies. So Greyboxer, defend your thumbs down pukey face when it comes to point vomit decks, and why is it so terrible for that to be a style of deck?
Well, that'll be easy, because the triangle that you talk about, right? The triangle that has the 3 deck archetypes. You got control, you got point vomit, you got engine. Okay. The problem with the triangle, which I can't really make with my hands very well, right? This is a triangle. The problem is right now it looks more like this, right? There isn't really a triangle.
Yes.
In fact, it's just a line. Either it's control a little bit, and it's all, basically tempo style. Mm-hmm. And I think this happened back in that patch that Panda referred to earlier, the Francesca kind of spam, and it didn't quite take hold more recently until Dwarves and the bronze value buff a couple patches ago. And so I think that the problem we're having with sort of like full aggro, point vomit style is that it exacerbates the coin flip. And people are already PO'd about what did I say, PO? People are already pissed about the coin flip and the lack of a fix. And they're getting told to get good by the developers. And so they're seeing cards that punish losing the coin flip, that have a ton of high value, and they're vomiting out points, and they're not spending time setting up, because why would you set up engines when you won the flip and you can take huge card advantage by just getting ahead, right? And making your opponent go down at 2 cards to win, or fall 2 cards behind when trying to catch up. So I think that the defense of point vomit as a criticism of an archetype is viable when other archetypes are not viable, and every single tier 1 deck is point vomit. And if we saw engines be more powerful, if they weren't as susceptible to removal, if they added a little bit more value, the only cards that are really working right now that are engines are cards that are easy engines. Cards like Smugglers, cards that basically help you with huge tempo swings like Mangonels. So the problem with really only having that as a viable archetype is that people are sick of seeing it now, and people are sick of it ruining their games when they lose coin flips. And I think that makes it so bad to play against, and so bad in general, and why it justifies the term and how gross it is.
Mm-hmm. Panda, what do you think?
I think it's just a problem with the way that decks work, specifically dwarves, because if you look at it, there has to be trade-offs, right? Like if an engine deck or a deck that builds up exponentially over time, it has, the first 4 turns of a round have to be below average, because you're playing cards, or you're playing, making plays that benefit you over a long turn. You're building up something, so it has to be a lower general average amount of points on the board compared to a deck that has no real synergy in terms of engine. Is just you're just putting points on the board, so like dwarves. And then at the middle, so 5, 6 turns in, or 4, 5, whatever, it doesn't really matter. It should be about the same. That's like the meeting point between those two kind of decks. And at the end of the round, the engine deck should have a bigger growth because they're exponential decks that should have more value. This is like Axeman. In a long round Axeman, they start curving up, and all of a sudden you're 100 points behind. But the problem with last patch was that Dwarves had a high average in the first 4 turns, had a high average in the middle turns, and had a high average in the end turns because you had everything you needed. And not only that, but the synergies with the cards, there was no trade-offs in terms of, do I play this card first because if I don't play this now, it'll lose value and I have to wait to play this better tempo card later on, or do I play this other card? But there was no decision in Dwarves, because in Dwarves you just play your Agitator, you play maybe Elven Scouts first because you can get Smugglers, but that's really the only decision. And then you get Ithling, which is a gold card that has no synergy with anything in the deck. You just play 2 random spells that are really strong. Or you play a Goliath and steal a very strong silver card. Like, there was no synergy, no equation, nothing going on with that deck. And it was powerful, and it was also very easy to play because there was no decision. You didn't have to think about like passes or plays. You had Ward Answer as well, so there was nothing to think about that deck. And it made it so that everyone plays it, because if there's a strong and easy deck, why not play it? And it made it very accessible compared to maybe Spy, which is also very strong but a lot harder to play. So that's the main thing, I think. It's just the fact that there weren't any trade-offs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not defending Dwarves of last patch. That's absolutely clear, because that deck was the extreme end of it, and I think that deck left a sour taste in our mouth as far as like how problematic tempo of that nature can be. But I think that what I wanted to address is more so the idea that we need to maybe remove that aspect of deck building away and create more engine-based decks, and like make decks like promote more synergies within decks and create more engines, so more of the game is about building up your strength and less about slamming the points on the board. However, in a situation like that, control would start to reign supreme, and then you'd have a situation where if all your engines can be controlled, is it really going to be like, what would the game be like if you just start to control everything? So then, the meta would just keep shifting, so one would dominate the other. The problem is and we really saw this in the last patch, tempo being the king. And much like other games where aggro is the king and you have to tech everything around kind of stopping that, and if you can't stop it or you can't reliably stop it, it's just always going to be the best. So I think that making sure that it's not super extreme, trying to balance that triangle, is always the goal that we should be moving towards, but kind of eliminating the idea of having just high value cards that you can play for big points shouldn't necessarily be... we shouldn't necessarily be seeking to eliminate that style of play completely. We just need to make engines better, but not make tempo, like, tempo should ultimately be outpaced. Just like you said, Panda, tempo should be outpaced by engines. Control should be able to shut engines down, but control should have not much to do against just big bodies and big points.
Exactly. I mean, if you look at Dwarves, you take a few points off all the bronzes, you take out Ithling Tremors, you let Ithling do what she normally does. That's not, a 60-point play, a 20-point play, whatever. You make her a normal gold. Guys can say the same, maybe take a point off like they did, and make, like they did with the Orb of Meditation as well, put some parameters on that ability, not just, let me just swing for 70 points against Neckers. If they do that and they make it so that point vomit or, standard point, decks have a better initial round, because they should, because an engine is being played for 8 points, you play a dwarf for 11 or 12, and the first 4 turns you're always going to average out with more points, and then you have to pass, because if you don't pass, the engines will overtake you, and that's how it should be. I mean, you should have trade-offs, and you can still build your deck around a finisher. You can still build your deck into some kind of long-term play as well with a standard deck like Dwarves, and not have it be like 100% engines. But like you said, it's a triangle. It's a trade-off. Like, you have to have, if a standard point deck can beat an engine deck in a long round, then something's messed up. Something went wrong in that equation. So as long as they fix a few things, they take a few points off Dwarves. Dwarves is a fine deck. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's easy. It's still a fun deck to play for some people. It was just very good as well. So that's the main problem, I think.
Yeah, I think that the nexus of easy to play and tier 1 is what causes problems, because then everybody can play it and play it well, or at least reasonably well. And so I think that you're right, Panda. I think that we should see archetypes that fail in deep rounds if they're great in short rounds, and vice versa. It's like balance everything to be more like X-Men then, right? Like that's like an engine deck, the way an engine deck should work. What if, we didn't have a way to increase the base power of all these point vomit cards with we saw that with the skirmishers nerf. They don't get strengthened anymore. That's less power for later. That's a good change.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You put something up where you said like a deck that's easy to play and powerful is dangerous, where I find this an interesting argument because I find that like when I see people say, the deck is easy to play and that's what and if it's easy to play and if it's powerful, it makes it like doubly volatile. And I know that there are clearly decks that have a higher skill cap than other decks, but I feel like if a deck is identified as being strong or the strongest even, then there's going to be guides about it. There's going to be a lot of streamers playing it. There's going to be, you're playing against it a lot. Eventually you're going to learn how to play it and it's going to kind of become easy because it's just going to be, you're going to have so much overexposure to this deck. So I always find it interesting, not you specifically, Greyboxer, because you didn't really lean on it, but I see it out there a lot. I see it out there kind of in the social landscape where like if a deck is easy to play, it's extra toxic. But I don't think that that's really like an actual like argument that has like weight to it, because people will learn how to play a deck that's very, very strong, because ultimately we want to crush our opponents, right? People want to go up the ladder. They want to get those rewards. Even though they're easier to get now, people want to get them. So I think that ultimately, like even Nilfgaard Spies, like I barely even played Nilfgaard, but I could probably grab that deck and like get the sequencing right generally. So, because I've played against it so many times and I've seen it in so many tournaments and on stream and stuff like that. So even though it's a harder deck to play at the highest level, that's much more important than it is for the average player, I think.
For me, I think just last comment here.
Yeah.
I think the Skellige Nova deck's last patch for me was a very fun deck to play, and a deck that I think has a lot going for it in terms of game plan and how it works, and it really forces you to make decisions. It's not a hard deck to play. It's not an impossibly hard deck to play, but I think it was almost a perfectly built deck, kind of like Spies is, where it has a lot of different things to think about and a lot of different ways to play it. And I think with the long chips being played early and the thinning with the power captains as well, it has like all the different things you need in the deck for it to be good. Maybe the King Brand carryover every single game is a problem, yes, and maybe a restore into like some weird stuff was a problem. But generally, I think it's a very fun deck to play. It could give you consistent results, and it had a game plan where you had to invest into long ships round one. You had to have good mulligans to thin. You had to think about your mulligans, and you had the long round finishers with Marauders as well. And it had pretty much everything I think I like for a deck to have in Gwent. And for me, that was a really fun deck to play. People didn't think it was tier 1. I think it was tier 1 or very, very strong. Even more than Dwarves, I think. I mean, I had a better score in Pro Ladder with it anyway than Dwarves. Maybe that's just because you ran into a lot of mirrors. But overall, that was a really, really fun deck for me to play. And I think that's a good example of what a fun and somewhat balanced good deck needs to be in Gwent.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of our on-the-fly strategy section that we just kind of built from the ground up just there, gentlemen. Yeah. I mean, it just kind of like the idea of just general kind of like the kinds of decks that you might see, because we're kind of in a meta right now where it's very nebulous as to like what's kind of reigning supreme right now. Like I think like lower ranks, some stuff is more popular than others, but generally it doesn't seem like there's a real kind of crushing presence. I mean, at the top of the ladder, this is obviously very different. Speaking from the point of view of the average person that might be listening or watching this podcast, I think that right now, especially coming off a meta where Dwarves, where Scoia'Tael specifically, were so dominant, it definitely feels like there's a little bit less of a grip around the average player's kind of experience. So I did want to just talk about that, I think. And I think that unless there's any closing remarks, I think I would like to know what the chat feels about kind of the meta as it's going on right now, what we were saying about the deck types that can be played, or maybe about the faction challenge or anything like that. But is there any last points for anybody? Any last little arguments to make?
Yeah, let's move on to the community section and talk to the chat about what they think about everything we talked about today.
Sounds good. Let's do that. Let's do that right now. Once again, we are supported by our commandos.
Commandos!
Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks so much to our newest commanders, Eamon M. and License to Draw. Thanks so much for supporting our content, keeping the podcast ad-free. We have some questions rolling in from the chat because we saw a lot of stuff. We talked about the faction challenge. We talked about the meta. We talked about deck types. But we talked about draft mode, which was just previewed on the developers stream barely an hour ago. Here's a question coming in here from Ugly Stepmother. What leaders will be best in draft mode? This is a good question because we saw Usurper taken by Austri and Luigi and Powell. We saw them play against Aridin and Dagon, and I think all three of those leaders would be pretty good. And I think that playing Usurper generally, or seeing Usurper lately, has kind of painted a picture of what a good random leader might feel like or be. I think Radovid lives on that list as well. What are you hoping that your first leader would be as you go into draft mode in a random zany, anything goes kind of mode? Greyboxer, what do you think?
Oh, that's going to be tough, but for me, it's got to be Radovid. Like, I want the ability to get good value, a carryover piece like Morkvarg or something. I want to shut down any possible strategy they might have. And or if they pull a Succubus or something, like I want to be able to shut down anything and everything. So if I hit Radovid, I'm going to feel pretty good.
What about you, Panda?
Yeah, I think that the neutral leaders are going to be the best by far. If you're a leader that has very specific archetype, like King Bran, for example, it's going to be, or like, I don't know. I mean, there's certain leaders that are very specific. Exactly, yeah, Hensel as well. If you can draw like Morkvarg, Ogre, Raid, or whatever, cards like those, and then find Bran at the end, great. You have some great synergy there. But in general, just the neutral leaders are going to be the best by far. Usurper's a good example as well because you can really get anything, so it adds to the fun as well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that Bran has got to be one of the worst ones in Hensel. They have to be probably the worst ones. But it's like,
as well, probably.
Well, I think you probably might be in a situation where the best silver might be, I don't know, like Skellige Storm. Like, there's some pretty bad silvers out there. Like, I can think of 3 silvers that are worse than Skellige Storm. So if you get like a couple of good specials, maybe it might be okay. But yeah, for sure, you'd probably lean more towards. I think Usurper is going to always be my pick because why stop at drafting to make things crazy? I want every game to be just an unpredictable mess. That's kind of where I want to go with it. Teleria Gwent asked in the chat, how do you feel about the podcast being named after a conditional 15-point silver after last patch? Well, Commander's Horn hasn't always been meta. Some metas have been better for Commander's Horn than others, but yeah, the nerf hurts. It hurts to be nerfed personally, like a personal nerf, right? Right, Greyboxer?
Yeah, this is a podcast nerf. I want my reparations.
I mean, the podcast was too strong, so they just had to nerf it. A quick 5-point nerf. Hopefully, it stays in line now compared to the rest of the podcast. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a funny thought because I mean, you guys have been around for a long time, and Commander has always been very relevant. But I mean, yeah, it's a bit sad to see it finally getting a bit of an axe.
I stopped. I didn't know if you were talking about the podcast or the card anymore by the end of that, Panda. But thanks for the honest and real actual answer to Teleria's troll question. Is awesome. Venus Ladak asks, I want to know why create cards are supposed to be good for the new arena mode. I saw many mentions of this, but why? I mean, my take on it is that since it's the create cards are cards that create other cards, you're just kind of adding value to cards that already exist. And since it's already a non-synergistic mode, you're just looking for extra points there. So it's kind of like how Roach adds value to golds. Vreemd would add value to whatever it spawns, and Elven Scout adds 1 point to whatever it spawns. So that's how I see it, but there could be more to it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I said a little bit earlier, I think that it's basically because you're given a choice. A lot of times you're playing create now basically as a high roll kind of card in your own decks. So you're not, your constructed format sort of deck is going to have create cards sometimes, and you're going to use that to the effect of getting a high roll and getting something that will really work in a given situation. Create gives you 3 different tools, good for usually 3 different scenarios. Hopefully one of the scenarios is the one that you're in. And so not knowing what kind of situation you'll be in any given arena match means that having the option to choose from one of 3 different tools is going to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you're picking a bronze card that lets you pick 3 more bronze cards, and they normally have some amount of guaranteed value for the most part. Whereas in draft mode, you're picking out of 4 bronze cards. You don't get that extra point. for picking a card, just a free point from the body from an Elvis count, for example, and you can't really get like absolutely terrible card like Infantryman or something that just has like no synergy whatsoever. So in general, I think it just adds a little bit more value and keeps it fun, I guess.
DG Thunder says, I'm excited for draft, but it will certainly, I'm excited for draft and will certainly play it at a good amount, but I'm worried about how random the card selection is and how rare synergies will be. I think it will get boring quickly, and that makes me very sad. I'm going to say I don't think it's going to get boring quickly, especially from a streaming standpoint where you can kind of meme a little bit. You can pick weird cards. You could say, I'm only going to pick the leftmost card or something like that. I think that there's going to be, and it's always going to be an unwind because, the rest of the game still exists. But I can see how picking from the entire card pool all the time might make things feel a little stale over time. It's kind of like when you make a hot playlist with 100 songs on it. You listen to that playlist like 7 or 8 times, even on shuffle. Even when you add 50 more songs to it, sometimes it's like, oh, this song again. So I hope it doesn't feel like that. I hope it doesn't actually feel like that. I want my analogy to be wrong. It's hard to look at it from that point of view because from what I saw, I'm so excited to try it. But I think DG Thunder is just kind of looking at it long term. Do you think there's any concern for long-term draft mode?
No.
I mean, I talked about it. I think you have to get the balance between fun and competitive to keep it relevant. And it's going to evolve, I think. What we see the first month won't be what will stay, I think, for the rest of Gwent's history. I think they'll change it up and they'll adapt depending on what the players demand and what the players think will make it more fun or more competitive or more give it more life in the long term. So we'll see maybe 10 golds being possible in the first month, and then maybe people say, oh, it's too much. Oh, it's just fun for a bit, but then it gets unbalanced or not fun enough to the point where I want to play it a lot. So I think it's going to evolve, and we'll see changes depending on what people think it needs, and I'm not too worried about it. I mean, it's going to be fun for the first month, guaranteed, no matter what. It doesn't matter how imbalanced it is, it'll be a fresh thing to play. And then I think we'll see changes, and CDPR has, always responded with, they're free to make changes and free to make things better over time if they get that feedback. So I think it'll definitely, change in the future.
Devil Driven has a good question. He wants to know what our God tier gold card will be in arena mode.
I mean, I think that Woodland Spirit is probably going to be a really good one. Even though it's actually, I wonder, maybe I'm just, my mind is in the past on that one. I mean, weather plus 8 points these days. I mean, Caranthir got buffed for a reason, right? Like weather plus a body wasn't necessarily enough. Well, he does have the movement as well. God tier. I mean, oh, geez. I think Coral seems like you can't go wrong. That's probably where I'm going to cop out and just go for one that was clearly shown on the stream. It just feels like I can't get past how good Coral might be. What do you think?
I think Royal Decree would be good because you're probably not going to draw into all your gold anyway, so it'll be a good way to draw the gold you need the most at that point in time. I think cards like Igni are still going to be pretty good. People might not play around it as much, thinking that you can't really guarantee people are going to play it like in maybe ranked, but it'll still surprise a few people if they're not really playing around it. Just the cards that get value no matter what. The synergy, I think, are going to be the best cards. Philippe is going to be pretty decent for a gold, I guess. God tier, I'm not sure though. I have to really start playing Arena and we'll find out, but it's hard to say.
Gold Weather would be my choice. As much as Panda took my option, I thought Royal Decree is good now. I can't imagine if you have a draft mode and have the ability to choose one of between 3 and 10 gold cards maybe, that you have really one of the best cards at your disposal. So I'm gonna go with Gold Weather. Maybe a card like Shiru even.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we'll have to see. I mean, there's going to be people that are going to craft out tier lists, and I think one more thing about the long-term excitement and kind of gameplay of Arena is you can look at other games that have draft modes, and they're very popular modes. There are streamers that dedicate themselves completely to playing those modes, and we've even seen community tournaments for those game modes pop up. So I actually am. The more I think about it, the less concerned I get. Hopefully no one's really concerned about that, but. Good questions from the chat. Of course, we can't get to every last question, but thanks so much for interacting with us, guys. We always like talking to you guys and doing this show live. We're going to wrap things up. Thanks so much for tuning into the podcast. Panda, one of the questions, actually, there's one last question to Delta65 asking, when's your next stream, Panda? But I'll segue this also into the question.
2019.
Where can people find you, Panda, when you're doing your thing?
You can find me on Twitch at ImpetuousPanda, although I haven't been, as regular the past month or two. But yeah, I'll definitely be streaming arena mode. That seems like a very fun thing to do. With Pro Ladder, I don't really feel like streaming too much. I want to play very seriously and very competitively. So streaming isn't, the greatest thing with that. We've seen a lot of streamers kind of fall off because of Pro Ladder, but I mean, it's understandable. If you want to either play pro or become an entertainer, it's two different paths, kind of. But arena mode is a different story, so I'll definitely be streaming some of that.
And Greyboxer with the mighty, what is that you're wearing exactly?
This is the cloak made from the hide of a wolf that I killed in main combat.
With your bare hands? Or
With
did it just occur in the state of Maine? I don't know.
Bare hands?
Ah, your bare hands? Yes.
Yeah, so you can find me on the Twitter at GreyboxerGwent. You can find me streaming at twitch.tv/Greyboxer. And yeah, I'm also on Discord. I'm talking all the time on the Commander's Horn patron Discord all the time. That's where I'm most active. You can also catch me. I'm a moderator on the official Gwent Discord, which is pretty cool and filled with many, many people to talk to about Gwent if you haven't had the opportunity yet. So check it out.
Growing every day, that Gwent Discord. Actually, both Discords growing every
10K,
day.
I think, almost. And yeah,
So
our
many
patron
people on
Discord.
It's like jumping into the Whitewater Rapids when you want to get into a conversation on that Discord.
Yeah.
But it is still a great place to go. There's a lot of channels, at least. You can filter some of it out. But it's the community keeps growing, and hopefully the new game mode brings a lot of people in, maybe brings a lot of people back. That's what I'm hoping. We will be wrapping this up. You can find me on Twitter as well, at McBeardCH. I do stream roughly 5 days a week at McBearded, twitch.tv/McBearded, and I do post YouTube videos on McBeard YouTube. Search me, you can find me there. And of course, the podcast, you can tweet at the podcast at Commander's Horn. Send us emails, commandershornpodcast@gmail.com. But that'll do it for us for the podcast. Once again, 71 episodes in the books. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today in the chat.
Until next time, this is Greyboxer.
And this is McBeard.
Best of luck.
And this is Panda.
Best of
Signing
luck
off.
on the back. Take care.
Oh, yeah, keep it.